Unlock the power of your mind. This is Provocative Enlightenment with Eldon Taylor.
Well, hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us today. The next 2 hours are devoted to learning something more. Not just about the world we live in, but about how, what, and why we believe as we do, the things we think. A time for the open-minded, willing to challenge some of those old ideas behind what we think we know, who we are, and who we might just become. I am Eldon Taylor, and this is Provocative Enlightenment. All right, our chat room is open, and my partner Ravinder and our chat room monitor Andrea await you there now. You can log on by going to provocativeenlightenment.com/chat. We do have a terrific chat room with some wonderful folks that join us. So, Ravinder, tell us all about it, please.
We have a lovely chat room. It's educational, it's fun, it's inspiring, and there's just a wonderful group of people. So do come join us. That is provocativeenlightenment.com/chat.
For all of our listeners who join us maybe on one of the other networks that air our show, and the show's not live when they are airing it, tell us, can they access the chat room? And
oftentimes in the chat room, we get bits of advice coming about recommendations. If there's URLs that are mentioned on the air, we will pop them into the chat room as well. So after the show, if you go to provocativeenlightenment.com/chat, you can replay the chat room and pick up all the links and all the information.
Okay, good. In this week's Spotlight, I want to draw your attention to the growing interest in thought-controlled robots. Indeed, it's not just thought-controlled robots, but thought-controlled everything. This is a rapidly expanding field. There are already thought-controlled prosthetic limbs, wheelchairs, computers, helicopters, and even genes. Indeed, Scientific American Mind, Volume 26, Issue 2, reported on work already completed this area. Quoting from their article, quote, "A team of bioengineers in Switzerland has taken the first step toward this cyborg-like setup by combining a brain-computer interface with a synthetic biological implant, allowing a genetic switch to be operated by brain activity. It is the world's first brain-gene interface," close quote. Work in 2014 led to the announcement of new synthetic mind-controlled gene switches that, via remote control, might be used in gene and cell therapies in the future. So imagine switching on and off gene expression, remotely even. And this is not science fiction. There is something that all of these new technologies share in common, and that's the real thrust of today's Spotlight. Many years ago, I was introduced to biofeedback. It was new and novel, and when demonstrated, it always seemed to be from the entertainment perspective. That is, a skilled person might use their mind to operate an electric train, starting and stopping it only with their thoughts. Or they might fly a small helicopter around the room, again instructing it only with the power of the mind. All of this seems interesting, but it held little public demand except in circumstances where biofeedback was the last resort for pain control or stress management. That's all about to change. At the pace this technology is moving, it will not be long before we have thought-operated home security systems, computer programs that write your to-do or grocery list, and so forth, television programming that interacts with your thoughts, and about anything and everything you can imagine that brings about convenience. Thought-based technology has arrived. It seems it would behoove all of us to begin to work with technologies that provide thought-based feedback. I have used several, and there are some truly good ones available. It would also seem that before too long we may find ourselves imprinting our thought activity on devices designed to make all of this easier for everyone. Devices that read our minds, so to speak. Scientists have already developed a brain decoder that can hear your inner thoughts. Quoting the report published in Digital Trends, quote, "Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley have invented a brain decoder device that's able to work out what you're thinking based on neuron activity inside the brain. Essentially, the experimental system means your private inner thoughts are no longer so private. Close quote. Governments around the world are very interested in this sort of technology. For example, there is something known as remote neural monitoring, or RNM, and it potentially may overhaul our entire criminal investigation system. This technology works well with a microchip implant, something most people believe they would never consider. But then, like healthcare microchips, perhaps there will be some persuasive argument that requires them. With a microchip present, the RNM could literally control emotion and dream content. But don't get too comfortable thinking that you would never allow someone to implant a microchip in your brain. For this same remote neural monitoring technology arguably could be used with extra low frequency, transmitted via satellite, cell phone tower, and so forth. Bottom line, we may need to learn the need for biofeedback control as a defense strategy against the onslaught of unwanted neural input. More than just a convenience, perhaps it's time for you to take control of your mind. Your thoughts on this, Ravinder?
I find that also scary. As you were going through that, I've got this picture in my mind of me in the kitchen with an automatic knife chopping the vegetables. But my mind doesn't stay focused on anything. It will meander off. What the heck is this knife going to be doing? As I'm watching TV, thinking about work, playing through an argument in my mind. No. And can you imagine someone operating a plane that way? Are you going to trust somebody? You know, the pilot could have had an argument with his girlfriend the night before, and then you all go nosediving.
I would imagine there are algorithms that will deal with, that kind of a problem. But no, I hadn't thought of that.
Oh, my mind just raced off with all of those possible what-ifs. And then you have the stuff about the implants as well. The sad fact of the world today is that they have ways to persuade you that it's in your best interest. So I can bet you at least 50% of the people out there at some point would be championing it, not complaining about it, but they'll be talking about all the benefits and how it saves the children and it stops, rapes going on and it stops,
Most people still aren't aware that the Affordable Care Act has provision for mandatory microchipping for, health care. So, you read the microchip, and right now, blood type and allergies and medical history and da-da-da-da-da-da. And, of course, the whole idea is it eliminates, at least drastically minimizes the amount of, or the number of, mistakes made by the medical profession that lead to life loss. So, all of these things, as you point out, do have a way of working themselves in. I'm going to go back to my IBVA system and box a little more with that character in my computer by mentally learning to control that, left jab and right hook a little better. Okay. Every week I read some of your letters as our way of involving you while paying respect to the very important role you play in making this show successful. Last week our guest was Dr. Linda Backman, and we discussed reincarnation and her investigations as a result of over 20 years of past life and in-between life regressions. Richard wrote, I find myself thinking about the range of personalities Eldon has hosted, from those that are laid back, they can hardly be heard, to this lovely lady off and running with just one question so far. I love that you ask about a person's background history. By the way, I happen to point out to you that we're getting copied on that by a couple of major radio hosts now. Yeah. That's not bad. I like that, huh?
Imitation is the best form of flattery.
Yeah. Janet wrote, I don't get it. How can you get karma for protecting America as a soldier? If your dharma is to be a protector, as Backman's husband did in a life as a general, then you are choosing to take on karma if she is right. That seems more than odd. I just can't buy that. Well, I totally agree with your evaluation, Janet. In fact, your letter kind of prompts me, and this is an important subject, so it's worth examining further. And next week, I think we'll make that our spotlight. We'll get into that one. Bruce wrote, I like the fact that you ask the tough questions instead of hovering around stories of past lives, stories that are not verifiable, or they would be headline news. Thanks for that. Mark, in dissent, wrote, I thought that more time should have been spent having Dr. Linda Backman share the past life and midlife experiences of her patients, along with any subsequent healing, and less time having her share her views on metaphysics. For me, one's interpretation of metaphysical reality, while sometimes fascinating, is subject to some subjectivism and speculation. I also detected how her particular ethical and political views may have clouded some of her judgment. Overall, though, a pleasant radio guest to whom I enjoyed listening. Glad you enjoyed, Mark. The thing about Dr. Backman was she has spent more than 20 years carrying out these investigations. As a result of which, as a former investigator, she sees patterns. It was the patterns I was most interested in our interview. We've all heard stories of, I was in past life, I was a general, I was Caesar, I was, and we can read that, it's a dime a dozen. But when you have a researcher who spent over 20 years, has conducted thousands of these types of investigations, they're in a particularly unique position to tell you what it is that they have learned that is their pattern. Mary wrote, as you said during the show, many psychologists who do not believe in reincarnation still use past life therapy for healing. Does that mean they believe the whole thing is something constructed in the mind and not real? I think, Mary, the question of real or not is just left to the patient. For a therapist, the purpose is healing, and it doesn't matter if there was really a past life or not. All that matters is, did it help their client? CB commented on Blackman's remark about the greater good. The girl with her nose and ears cut off, example, is easier to come down on a side for. However, something like Governor Jerry Brown signing the California bill into law that inoculations for children is mandatory in order to attend public school, with only a doctor's excuse to get out of it. He called the greater good of California citizens justifying any action against those who are harmed by the vaccines. All right, moving on. May wrote, I have quite a few of Eldon's CDs. Love all that he does. Rand wrote, Eldon, you may enjoy this interesting synchronistic moment I had while listening to the YouTube interview with Dr. Radin. I was listening while clicking through the random pages of the Stumble app from my computer. As you were asking Dean a question about reading the autobiography of a yogi at the 1:31 time marker, Stumble displayed the page showing the book, Autobiography of a Yogi. That was neat, since Dean had just also related that people experience more synchronicity after doing yoga and meditation for a time, which I do. Great interview, by the way. That would be kind of fun, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Might even be a little bit spooky. Mm-hmm. David made this comment. Dear Ravinder, I have traveled and lived in 34 countries, so I have a fairly good grasp of the world and how it sees us Americans. Your letter, Lessons from America, and its insights, to my surprise, brought misty tears to my eyes. Thank you for sharing. Now, it was a great newsletter, Rav, and I know all about all the feedback that you received. So, as an ex-Brit, lady, how does that make you feel?
I think that's really cool. I was just being open and honest in that one, and part of it I thought, I was afraid some people could be offended by, because the impression of America around the world is not always as positive as we would like it to be. But no, I have definitely become a very proud American. I can see why it's the greatest nation, and there's a lot to learn from it. There isn't any ideal higher for me than that of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
No apologies either.
No.
And Paula wrote, Kudos to you, Ravinder, for your excellent newsletter. Very informative and well written. I subscribe to a great many newsletters, but I often find myself reaching quickly for the delete button for many of them. Not so with yours, although I admit I had deleted several in the past without even reading them. Once I took the few minutes to read one, I was hooked. I find your approach very inspiring and insightful, and now I definitely take the time to read each one that comes through. Your recent newsletter regarding America and becoming an American was just wonderful. I love it when people around the world get us. Thank you for your praises, and one last comment. Although I have been aware of Eldon's work for several years and have read a couple of his books, it was not until now that I found the inspiration through your commentaries to purchase the programs and begin using them. Eldon's work is very important, and he is very lucky to have you at his side to enlighten and inspire. With that said, keep up the good work, and God bless you both. Now, Paula, you got it very right. I am very lucky. And for all of you out there, if you're not getting our free newsletter, you can end that waste right now. Just go to eldontaylor.com and subscribe. You want to add anything on that?
No, I think that's all really cool. You know how many times you have said you teach what it is that you want to learn? Well, I think of myself as being your number one student, and for the last, was about 6 months since I've been writing these pieces, I've been teaching what it is that I want to learn. It's the progression in learning. So I've got a long, long ways to go, but it's a fun ride.
Who doesn't have a long, long ways to go? Walk on water, and you get my attention. All right, that's all the time we're going to take for letters today, but I do invite you to apply by sending your comments to Eldon. That's ELDON at eldontaylor.com, or by joining me on Facebook. And I want to thank all of you for your letters and comments. We truly do appreciate your feedback and support. Now to this week's show, Spirit, Mind, and Money, a new conversation about service and success for holistic business owners with author Don DelVecchio. One of the interesting forms of dissonance that I have often encountered in the world of New Age parlance begins with this proposition. We are all one, share and share alike, lose the ego, and remember this is all an illusion, for separation from God is only in your mind, in the world but not of the world, be not attached to worldly things. Proposition 2. You are a co-creator and entitled to the riches of the universe, prosperity, wealth, abundance. You deserve all, and you can create all of this and more. Money and fame can be yours. That new car, the swimming pool, the fancy home, and so much more can all be yours. Just know it, believe it. You will attract it. Now think about that paradox. Surrender the ego and merge with the one like the Tibetan monk. And make a lot of money so you can have all the goodies you ever wanted. Detach from the worldly this and that while you do it. Now that's just a bit more dissonant than dissonant in my view. So is there some middle ground? Is it even fair to think about money and spirituality in the same breath? After all, the good book informs us that the love of money is the root of all evil. Many people today resent those with money, the so-called 1%ers, and at the same time they visualize themselves with more and more riches, actively seeking more money. They see that new Cadillac going down the road and think, that filthy rich son of a gun, boy, I'd like one of those. And what kind of thinking is that? Many people feel they can't trust the wealthy. Isn't that a lot of what we heard about people like Mitt Romney? Yet they want more money for themselves. How then does money equate when it comes to spiritual practices? Enter today's guest. Don DelVecchio is a professional copywriter, marketing consultant, and entrepreneurial business coach. She's also been a luxury travel writer, a magazine editor, a professional kickboxer, kickboxing coach, even an astrologer. Until recently, these diverse career paths shared one common denominator. They kept her close to broke. After having a child as a young single mother, Dawn spent most of her adult life developing herself through spiritual study and practice while simultaneously living in a chronic financial struggle. She attributes the change in her financial life to a change in her mindset around money. Dawn understands firsthand the painful disconnect that happens when heart-centered helpers don't address their relationship to money. And she's on a mission of sorts to address this sometimes taboo subject so that people who are called to have a greater impact with their work don't get stymied by subconscious blocks, faulty vows of poverty, and what she calls unexamined money mantras. So on that, let's get her in here. Welcome to Provocative Enlightenment, Dawn DelVecchio.
Hi there, Eldon. Thank you so much for having me today. It's great to be here.
Indeed, our pleasure. We're looking forward to this. But, to begin with, we like three things. I know you're a regular listener to the show. Mm-hmm. Three things from our guest. Who is the messenger? What is the message? And, of course, how do we use it? So to that end, please tell us about your life as a young person. What did you want to be when you grew up, Dawn?
Oh, that's a great question. What did I want to be when I grew up? I don't even remember now. Maybe a lawyer or something. I remember that was one of many.
Well, that's all right. I still haven't decided.
Cool. Yeah, and as you can see, I've obviously sampled a lot of different careers. So I was born in Connecticut, and I was the first child of my parents adopted, where my brother and I are both adopted. I was raised in a Catholic family. And I would say the one sort of discerning thread throughout my early childhood all the way into adulthood was a disconnect with mainstream thought, whether that was religion, social, or what have you. I didn't feel very the principles that I was being raised with didn't make sense to me. And you use the word dissonance to start this conversation with me, and I really, it's a beautiful word. I don't use it in my book, but it makes so much sense that I felt a disconnect between a lot of things. Like, for example, let me give you one illustration. We used to sit at the dinner table. I was born in 1965, so that was the beginning of the Vietnam era. So we used to sit at the dinner table every night. My dad came home from work, and he would listen to the news on the radio, and that was the era where they were, the news was about the war and the body count and that sort of thing. And then I would go to church and learn about, God and hear about how we have to give the church money and like all of the things there. And none of it made sense to me. I couldn't make sense of the values that I was being raised in. Even though my parents are very good people, they're very religious people, and very decent people. I just didn't really relate. So, I lived the life that I lived growing up. When I was 2, my brother came into the family, and fast forward a bunch of years, and it's time for me to have my confirmation, which is a Catholic rite of passage at teenagerhood.
Right.
And I remember as soon as we were done with the whole ceremony and the party afterwards and stuff, I sat my parents down and I said, Mom, Dad, I'm not a Catholic. I don't know what I am. Maybe I'm a Buddhist, but I'm not a Catholic, and I'm not going to go to church anymore. And the funny thing is that the whole Buddhist thing was just literally, I pulled it out of the ethers. I had heard about it, but I had no idea what it was. And it wasn't until many years later that I spent, a great deal of time in Southeast Asia, feel very resonant with certain aspects of that culture, that I realized that actually, if you were to put my hand to the fire and say, Dawn, choose a mainstream religion, it would absolutely be Theravada Buddhism. That's practiced in places like Thailand and Burma and stuff. So that was my sort of venturing off, and then I went and did wild child teenager stuff, followed the Grateful Dead, came home 18 years old, pregnant, single, young, and
all right, I'm going to ask you to hold your story right there.
Sure.
So we don't get kicked out. We've got a commercial. We're speaking with Dawn DelVecchio about her life, work, and books, Spirit, Mind, and Money. To learn more about Dawn, visit her website at Dawn DelVecchio. That's DelVecchio.com. Okay, remember to join Ravinder and Andrea in the chat room. You can do that by going to provocativeenlightenment.com/chat. Do stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Provocative Enlightenment with Eldon Taylor.
Gotcha by Eldon Taylor exposes just how far the reach of propaganda, brainwashing, and public manipulation has advanced. You will learn about the many covert activities designed to marginalize your freedoms and educate you to march in lockstep with the agenda of the so-called elite, including advanced technologies used to subvert resistance. 1984 has arrived and the plutocracy is in charge, and most are totally unaware of just how deep the tentacles reach. They don't want you to have this book. There have been broken deals and even indirect threats designed to stop Gotcha from being published. Set for release in September, you can pre-order it now at the discount price of $19.88, with free freight to anywhere in the world. For details, go to eldontaylor.com/gotcha. Don't wait, get your copy while you can. That's eldontaylor.com/gotcha.
Unlock the power of your mind. This is Provocative Enlightenment with Eldon Taylor.
I'm Don Juan's reckless daughter. I came out 2 days on your tail. Those 2 bald-headed days in November before the first snowflake sail. Out on the vast and subtle plains of mystery, split-tongued spirit talks, noble as a nickel chief, striking up an old jukebox. He says, snakes along the railroad tracks. He says, eagles in jet trails. He says, coils around feathers and talons on scales. Gravel under the belly plates. He says, wind in the wings. He says, bird dragging its tail in the dust. Snake kites flying on a string. I come from open prairie, given some wisdom and a lot of jive. Last night the ghost of my old ideal ran on Channel 5. And it howled so spooky for its eagle soul, I nearly broke down and cried. The split-tongued spirit laughed at me, he says, the serpent cannot be denied. Our serpents love the whiskey bars, they love the romance of the crime. But didn't I see a neon sign fester on your hotel blind? And a country road come off the wall. You swooped down on the crowd at the bar and put me at the top of your danger list just for being so much like you are.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, we're chatting with Dawn DelVecchio about her life, work, and book, Spirit, Mind, and Money. Now, we ask our guests for 3 pieces of music, 3 of their favorites, music that has some genuine significance to them. Music is more important than most of us recognize. Music can, indeed it has, awakened forgotten memories and restored lost states of consciousness. Indeed, music psychology is a field of research with practical relevance for many areas, including investigations of human aptitude, skill, intelligence, creativity, personality, and, of course, social behavior. According to one recent study, you can even determine a person's social class by their favorite music. As such, there can be a great deal of self-disclosure in the selection of a person's favorite music. And I just love that. We don't give them advance notice. I make doggone sure, of course, if they're regular listeners like Dawn, they're probably already wise to this. But okay, Dawn, we just played Don Juan's Reckless Daughter by Joni Mitchell. What is that telling us about you?
It's multi-layers, more coming to me as I heard you play it just now. Your serpent cannot be denied. The eagle and the serpent are at war in me. The serpent fighting for blind desire, the eagle for clarity. Now, these are the Joni Mitchell's poetic ways of saying really what you addressed at the very beginning, the bypass, the spiritual bypass, the paradox of us being spirits here in the material world, to use another great songwriter's term that was Sting. We are learning how to be in this material world and honor both the eagle and the serpent, both the spirit and the body, and the mind as well. So this was a song from when I was 16 years old, and even then, as I've already sort of framed for you, I was questioning mainstream thought. I was questioning the way things were, and it wasn't until I started listening to poets like Joni Mitchell who were pointing to some of the questions that I would unpack as an adult, the deeper meaning underneath. What is this all about, this experience for us?
So you related to it. I mean, it's an interesting piece of, coincidence or synchronicity that we, before the break, left off with you about to tell us that you're 18 and pregnant, and we come back from the break with Don Juan's reckless daughter. So,
right.
Pick it up. You're 18 and pregnant.
I'm 18 and pregnant, and not only that, I have been in groovy California, so I know of things like home birth. I have read the book, Spiritual Midwifery, so I'm very clear that I'm not going to do mainstream stuff. I mean, after all, I've navigated up to this point, avoiding mainstream stuff. So I tell my parents, I look for a midwife. I find 2 very highly qualified midwives willing to be present with me at the home birth. They were hesitant about doing that for a teenager until I met with them the first time and had several pages of pretty sophisticated questions to ask them. And they said later that was the reason why they realized that I had myself together. And so I told my parents, look, I want to have a home birth. And my father immediately said, not in my house, you're not. So I went to my midwife. We discussed it. We said, all right, well, maybe when I go into labor, we'll get a hotel room. So I went back to my parents. I said, look, I know I'm 18 and pregnant and I don't have a lot of money, but I'm going to get a hotel room because I'm not going to the hospital unless an emergency requires it, in which case I will. And I think at that point, my mother probably grabbed my father by the ear and dragged him into a conversation that said something along the lines of, our daughter will not have a child in a motel room. So I had my son, my beautiful son, Zach, who's now 31, in the bedroom I grew up in, and my mom was with me. She was one of the women attending to me during the labor and birth of my son. So from there, I went to university, got a degree in women's studies, joined a women's mother support group of women who were having home birth. That quickly turned into feminist goddess ritual stuff. And I did that until I moved, till I couldn't find a job after graduation and moved out to New Mexico, where I kick-started really my first career in the world, surprisingly, of martial arts. So with my son, who was 6 and then quickly turned 7 at the time. And shall I keep going? You want to ask me some questions? Or?
No. That's I think we all get the picture. So your martial arts form was kickboxing, right?
Yeah, Muay Thai kickboxing. So the kickboxing with elbows and knees, the Thai version of kickboxing.
All right. I'm going to fill our readers in a little bit here because I've got a question built around it. So here you are today, and you're a business person. And you work with business people, and you teach them money management and among many other things, okay? So, but for many years, you practiced some, pretty weird stuff by the standard of most business people.
Yeah.
So, for example, you read tarot, you were an astrologer, you had personal interests, as you say, in goddess lore, ceremonies, and, of course, you were involved in pugilism. So here's the 2-part question. How did you make the transition to business coach, and how often do you find your history either defining what you do now or interfering with it because, how can I take you seriously?
Okay. Well, I'm going to address the second part first. The history, what did you say, how it's defining me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so... really, well, first of all, the martial arts, not only did I practice pugilism and fight in the ring, I brought many students in the ring. And, I coached them and mentored them to get in the ring. So that honed my teaching skills. it also really aligned with the value, the desire, the intent I set in my women's studies, which is that, in college, I want to help women empower themselves. I was not a person who was set to become a champ, and nor was I set to try and help people become champs. I saw fighting in the ring as a way some people chose, and developing their martial skills, including their self-defense skills, as a way to develop personal mastery and to overcome fear. So I have many stories of women who first stepped into a ring in a low barrier of entry practice experience, in tears because of the emotional charge around it, and eventually come to, after 2, 3, 4 bouts, really knowing something about themselves that they didn't know before, and having a degree of self-confidence and self-assuredness in their bodies and in their minds about who they were that was very different than when they first walked in my gym. So that translates to being a coach and a mentor for this.
And directly, too. So do you think that your boxing instilled a sort of competitiveness and as well as the confidence that provides an edge today in the arena of money and business? Or do you see money and business as being competitive?
I don't think it has to be. I really operate from a totally different standpoint. In fact, my senior thesis in university was all about women's competitive behavior in places like academia and how toxic that was because it was following an old hierarchical model of competition and scarcity. So competition doesn't actually come up for me that much. I believe we live in an abundant universe, but more than that, where there are many messengers delivering the message, and we're not here to serve everyone. And in marketing, we know this. As a business and marketing consultant, I can tell you that your job is not to reach everybody. And I'm sure you understand this, Eldon. Not everyone is going to groove with provocative enlightenment. Not everyone relates to provocative enlightenment, but that's okay because you're here to reach and speak to certain people who resonate with your message and value your position. And with the World Wide Web, we're able to reach and serve a greater audience. And there are many, many business coaches, right? So there are many of us doing the same thing, different language. I'm here to serve certain people, and by being real clear on my message, I can reach them more. So the competition piece is not a piece that I've actually, I'll meditate on that more, that you brought it up. But it's not something that I've really looked at.
But if you sit down with an SBA officer or your bank officer and you have a new business idea, the very first thing they want to know is who's your competitor. If you traditionally, if you go to a money manager, a business manager, they're going to advise you to copy or to follow John Paul Getty's advice to, the best way to success is to copy success. So they're going to want to look at your competition. You don't look at competition. Where do you start from then?
Oh, it's not that I don't look at it. I'm just really reframing it. It's like I do. In fact, one of the questions I ask my clients when I onboard a coaching client is, who is your quote-unquote competition and or the leaders in your industry? Because we're going to look to them to see what their language is. How is that same or different than yours? So it's not. I guess I'm addressing the term competition.
Okay, so I get you.
I'm not competing with them. In other words.
I've got you.
Yeah.
I think, all right, I understand that. Now, Don, you heard the setup piece. What are your thoughts on what I called, in dissonance is holding two ideas simultaneously and not recognizing that they're mutually exclusive? So the idea that we should surrender our egos, avoid attachment, accept this world as an illusion, while simultaneously holding the notion that we're entitled to create as much wealth as we want and thereby gain all the physical this and that we choose. Is there a middle path, or are we just caught in this dissonance that, prosperity is all about having more than the person next to me, because isn't that, after all, what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to have the better car. I'm trying to have the bigger house. I'm, trying to have more money, etc. I'm certainly not starving. Most people that struggle with finances they're not starving. They're not, in poverty. They're not living, in some dirt home hovel in Africa. They have health care available to them, and they have their warm beds to go to. So how do you see this? Is there a middle path between the spiritual approach of non-attachment and the law of attraction, if you will?
I believe there is, and I love that you use the term middle path, because as we've sort of danced around a little bit Asia and the Buddhist...
Your Buddhism, yes.
Teachings, certainly that's exactly what they address. And it's exactly what my book addresses, which is why I call it Spirit, Mind, and Money. Because to completely detach ourselves from worldly desires or worldly requirements, really, is... I live in Sedona, where I see a lot of people doing that side of the... that extreme of the pendulum of it's all good, it'll all work out, if it was meant to be, it'll meant to be, and money isn't important to me and all that stuff. And what happens is they struggle terribly. And this is a dense reality we are living in. So there is something to be said for having the things that we need. Now,
but don't you find, I don't want to interrupt you, but don't you find, even with those people that say, money is not all that important, that they want more money?
Oh, yes. Yeah, but there's so much confusion. This is who I was, right? This is the community that I really relate to. There's so much confusion around what that is. You see, as long as we say we do our meditations, we light our incense and our candles for abundance, but we don't actually address the subconscious beliefs we actually have that love of money is the root of all evil, and the habits of saying things like money isn't important to me, I just want to help people, all of that stuff. We're not really addressing the reality of living in a physical body, where there is a place where we can be spiritual and live in abundance. Whatever that means to you. It doesn't mean you have to have millions and hog it all for yourself. What it means is to live a life where you're not living hand to mouth and in a constant spiral of struggle.
Okay, and so the middle path really requires redefining how we look at money. So do you promote the love of money, or how would you define money?
I define money as energy. Money is an energy. It's a system of exchange. And so it's really not about the love of money. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with wanting to have enough ability to engage in that system of exchange to live our soul purpose, whatever that is. And
let me try something on you, if I can, Don. I had the good fortune of having a very wealthy mentor at a point in my life, who explained to me that money was just stored energy. He explained it this way. I go to work in the morning, and I work 8 hours, and at the end of that day, I leave and I go home. And maybe once a week or twice a month, I get a paycheck. And the paycheck represents how I've invested my energy, what I have done with my time. If I sat at home and watched TV, well, the paycheck doesn't... There is no money for doing that. So money is my stored energy, he said. Now, he suggested that as our stored energy, what we want to do is multiply it. We want it to work as hard for us as we work for it. How does that kind of a definition fit with what you do?
It absolutely fits with what I do, although I would say that the work I do in terms of business coaching and consulting and the message of my book don't go that far along, because first we have to get people getting out of struggle, the people that I'm speaking to, out of the struggle of working 60, 70 hours a week to build a small business and serve others and still not get ahead, before you could think about even investing your money to get your money to work for you. So one step has to come before the other.
Let's discuss wealth for a moment. Can a person have too much? I mean, in the spirit of share and share alike, should the wealth of men like Bill Gates be redistributed among the masses? And if it were, do you believe this would solve any poverty issue
That's a really good question, and it starts to go into some of the other issues that I definitely don't bring up much in my personal life. I do, but there is a small percentage of people who control the vast majority of wealth on this planet, and that has set about
80 families, over 90%.
Yeah, and so it's quite appalling. And if that were redistributed, would it change the face of the earth? Of course it would. Of course it would. And simultaneously, my message, my desire is to help the people who want to be of service to recognize that by staying disempowered and out of money, not having enough money by charging too little for their services, etc., this is not going to solve that problem. That's a macro issue. If by staying broke, we don't keep that small percentage from distributing, we don't encourage that fair distribution. But what we do when we step up and we say, look, I am willing to charge the value of the transformation I offer, and I'm willing to live in a level of abundance that allows me to hire other people, for example, to distribute my own wealth, to contribute to charitable causes, then we step up more empowered, able to serve, instead of being broken healers, broken transformational leaders.
So if I've got you correct, you can have too much money. And
at some point, yeah. I suppose it is. It's not really a conversation.
And when you talk about, I'm sorry, say that again.
Well, it's not really a conversation I engage either in my book or my clients. I mean, there are a few people on the planet who have, you could say, too much. Right. Absolutely. And
money is power, and they use the power. But so you would be in favor of redistribution of the wealth, with maybe the 80 richest families that control 90% of the wealth, but not redistribution of wealth below that? And or should we redistribute all entirely throughout the world, so those poor people that live in those hovels in Africa have as much as the poorest of us, or more?
I don't know that I feel prepared to answer that question, Eldon, and here's why. Because I do know this: when we simply give money without giving the tools, skills, or abilities to value it, it often becomes squandered. So there is the theory that you can redistribute all the wealth, and in a few years, the few who have it will have it again.
Amen.
So,
amen.
Yeah. So I really can't. I say yes, there's injustice, and I don't think the solution is that simple. I think free energy is a solution that could simply change things.
I agree.
But that particular solution, I don't know.
Let me ask you this then. People of wealth have been vilified, especially since the Occupy Wall Street movement. So how many of us do you think carry around some self-sabotaging inner belief that money is inherently evil, that, you don't want to be a part of that elite group, where we may envy it, where we may covet it, at the same time we push it away because, it is just dirty. It's just, they must have done something crooked to get it. It's just, you deal with a lot of that, I know. So what do you think? Yeah. Should we be vilifying wealthy people, or should we be looking at the guy with that new Cadillac and saying, wow, that's for me, I'm going to have one of those too?
Yeah, I think absolutely, first of all, your first question, that there are absolutely a lot of people who are vilifying the wealthy, and I feel for sure money expands who you are. So if you're a creep, guess what? You're going to be a bigger creep with more money. If you're greedy and insecure and you want to hoard, then you're going to be greedy and insecure and hoard more with more money. This is that disconnect, or what I call, what I borrow the term spiritual bypass. Right. There's confusion around it. There is a huge gap between the people I'm talking to or the people who are saying, oh, those greedy bastards on Wall Street, and the few who have the money. There's a lot of room for us to live in abundance and not be greedy, hoarding, one percenters, if you know, or whatever that stereotype is.
You know, the problem with that 1% model, I think, Don, is that we don't see them driving the Cadillac on the road. You know, what we see is that middle-class person, they might be upper middle class, but they're still driving themselves, you know. They're not living in a mansion, they just have a nice home. And that I think further compounds how we get confused about the value of money. Your book is a great book. I think it's a great read, and I think anybody that is thinking about going into business particularly, or is in business, that struggles with money, should give it a read. Don, we have a commercial. When we get back, I'm going to ask you more specifically about your book. If you would like to know more about Don DelVecchio and her book, Spirit, Mind, and Money, be sure to check it out at Amazon online. Is it at Barnes & Noble as well, Don?
No, actually, the book is not published yet. It doesn't actually publish until the 19th, and then at that point it will start on Amazon. At some point it'll go.
Well, you have a pre-sale on Amazon right now. You could pre-buy it now, I know that. Okay, we have a video for you during the break featuring our guest titled 7 Secrets for Growing Your Business. You can view it by joining the chat room. Just go to provocativeenlightenment.com/chat. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Provocative Enlightenment with Eldon Taylor.
Gotcha by Eldon Taylor exposes just how far the reach of propaganda, brainwashing, and public manipulation has advanced. You will learn about the many covert activities designed to marginalize your freedoms and educate you to march in lockstep with the agenda of the so-called elite, including advanced technologies used to subvert resistance. 1984 has arrived and the plutocracy is in charge, and most are totally unaware of just how deep the tentacles reach. They don't want you to have this book. There have been broken deals and even indirect threats designed to stop Gotcha from being published. Set for release in September, you can pre-order it now at the discount price of $19.88, with free freight to anywhere in the world. For details, go to eldontaylor.com/gotcha. Don't wait, get your copy while you can. That's eldontaylor.com/gotcha.
Unlock the power of your mind. This is Provocative Enlightenment with Eldon Taylor.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Don DelVecchio about her life, work, and book, Spirit, Mind, and Money. Now, Don, we just played your second musical choice, Hard to Handle by the Grateful Dead. How hard to handle are you?
That's a great question. I guess you'd have to ask my husband about that.
Why is this one meaningful to you?
Because it is the funkiest, most danceable, most happy song that I've ever come across. I love it. I love to dance to it. That particular song was from before my time as a deadhead on tour, but it's a fave to dance to. When I need energy or inspiration, I just turn that on real loud and dance.
So you have clearly in your mind the first time this song really moved you, where you were, what you were doing, da-da-da, right?
That's a good question. I don't think I remember the very first time. It wasn't at a concert because, again, that's from 1972, I think, so before my time.
No, but
yeah.
Not the first, but it wasn't before the first time you heard it.
No, the first time I heard it, I'm sure it was in those early Deadhead years, and I probably was at a party and just the music danced me.
Yeah. Be interesting to know what happened at that party. Psychologist in me has to look at that kind of stuff. Listen, money, it said, leads to power, and absolute power absolutely corrupts, or so, again, goes the saying. Is this true in your mind? And if not, why not? Especially when we live in a world dominated more and more by the rule of what might be called a plutocracy.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and lots of money can lead to absolute power. Agreed. And there's a big gap between living in abundance and prosperity and, living well and living in absolute power. The people who are there's an awakening happening of holistic healers, practitioners, spiritual people, astrologers, yogis, etc. Our goal has nothing to do with power and controlling others. Our goal is to bring a new, more enlightened message to the planet, to the people we feel on a soul level here to serve. So by us having enough money to live well and to serve generously does not lead to corruption and power.
Right.
Again, going back to the same thing I said, money expands who you are.
And it takes money to fulfill that vision, the vision of bringing more enlightenment, information, opportunities, etc. That takes money. So my question, I guess, is, do you think people conflate the issue? That is, they think of money in its worst use, and that tends to have them push it away from them and thereby deprive them of the better use.
Absolutely. That's exactly the problem. And that's exactly the problem I address in the section of the book called Money, Spirit, Mind, and Money.
The third section, right. All right, let's delve into your book. To begin with, your focus is really on holistic businesses. But for our listening audience, just as a matter of curiosity, wouldn't your methods work just as well both for the average person out there and for the major corporations, Coca-Cola, Hewlett-Packard, General Motors, and so forth?
To the first, I'd say yes, indeed. It really is a message for anyone who is a small business owner who is not answering to the demands of corporate shareholders. So there's a distinction there. Okay. Is the message valuable for corporations, these big name corporations? I certainly didn't intend it to, and I don't really see how it could. As long as corporations are beholden to their shareholders who are looking at bottom line profits, their agenda is very, very different than the solo business owner who just wants to do well in the world and do well by their customers.
Okay, so now let's clear some things here. We have corporate officers who are charged legally with the obligation of making money for the corporation. So sometimes their decisions, for all intent and purposes, are not the best decisions for all concerned. They're rather selfish decisions for their stockholders. And as such, they may do things that harm or are harmful to a large number of people, but it still profits their corporation and the 401ks, the people that are invested, etc., in that free trading stock. That's one use of money.
Mm-hmm.
There's another use of money, and that's where your focus is, and that's the small business person who is not intent on making money as much as they are intent on providing service. Have I got that right so far?
Yes.
Then isn't there also built into that proposition the notion that, well, you know, money isn't all that good. It's only good if I can do good. I mean, isn't there also some inhibition built into the definition that I don't intend to make as much money as I can. I intend to help as many people as I will want, as I can. And I ask that question from a personal side because I have made many decisions in my own business over the past 40 years that I think have been not necessarily in the best interest of the business. We give away a lot of product, and we try to help in a lot of areas. And I, could have done more by way of profit if I'd have looked at business differently. And I'm very aware of how major corporations work because I also do some, I've had the privilege of working with Fortune 500 execs. So this seems to be, something that they balance as well. They try to balance. Where is the balance, Don?
The balance is probably not static. We're imperfect beings doing the best we can. And I do believe we have the right to live in abundance, to live in joy, to get vacations, to gift our children with good things like organic food or whatever our values are. And because of the people that I am speaking to are by their nature the ones who give and overgive and give to the point of empty vessel, I really am wanting to communicate the other part of the message, which is that's all well and good, and if you make more money, you'll be able to serve more people. And you have a right to do things like go on a vacation, buy organic food, get a massage, enjoy your life, live also for this life that is yours, a precious gift.
Okay, let me ask you this. This is kind of where I'm trying to go, and maybe you can define this for me. When I look into the world, I generally find a spirit in everything in the world. Now, by spirit, I don't mean that quintessential spirit that we think of as, life force, so much as I see in a painting the spirit that was imbued by the artist in that painting, and in a home, that of the architect and the builders and the handymen that were involved in building that home. I see spirit in most things. So my question to you is, does money have a spirit? If it does, how do you define it?
Does money have a spirit? I haven't thought about that. I would say this. When you go around chanting a mantra that says, money's not important to me, the spirit, if you will, if you want to use it in the terms in which you're using it, the spirit of money will say, okay, I'll go somewhere else where I'm appreciated. So in that sense, I suppose it is. It's a system of exchange. It's an energy, right? It's an energy. We exchange. Sometimes you might have 5 pigs, but I don't need 5 pigs in exchange for my coaching for you. So you give me money in exchange, and then I can go buy 3 broccolis with it or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In that sense, I suppose you could say there's a spirit to it.
So where I'm getting to is I think we imbue money with a spirit. If we receive the money with gratitude and appreciation, it has a different value. I mean, I've shown my sons this, and I've seen it repeatedly. When you find people who have very little money, they may wad it all up and it's in their front pocket, and the denominations are commingled, and and they're at the checkout stand, and you see them unfolding it, and it's all wadded up, and some of it looks like it went through a washer, and they're separating the denominations and to pay their bill. And I have never seen a person who had any money who treated money with that kind of disrespect.
Yes.
I have taught my boys, you separate that money by denominations. You straighten it if it's bad. If you're at the bank and they give you a wadded bill, tell them you want another one. You put it away. You respect it, because if you don't respect it, you'll never have it.
It's so agreed. And Eldon, that brings up a memory recently of me gifting someone something. And actually, a person I've gifted several times something, and
please share.
Her inability. What's that?
I say share. Tell us the story.
Yes. So she was. I gifted her 2 different times something, and each time the energy was the inability to receive. Oh, I'll save these and share them at work tomorrow. Or, oh, I'm going to put this over here, and if someone else, it's outside, but if someone wants to take it, that's okay. And while that wasn't about money in particular, it did have something to do with the ability to receive and to pause and say, thank you. I honor this. And I have a mentor who says, if you're imagining you're going to have a whole bunch of money come into one personal bank account, you're crazy. You have to set up the right circumstances for the wealth to come in the form of business entities, bank accounts, etc. And this speaks to the same thing you're talking about, honoring that energy, that spirit of money, being appreciative and being able to receive.
Revenue streams, added revenue streams. Okay. In the setup piece, I quoted some of your copy, introducing you. One of the quotes basically says that, you struggled with finances until you had a different mindset. So let's do this. Let's go to your book and unpack some of that mindset. Part 1 of your book is designed to examine the spirit of your business. Please flesh this out for us. What do you mean by that?
Yes. The spirit of your business is both the soul movement expression, the desire, I know that I'm here to fill in the blank. That's part of it. But the other part of the spirit of your business, in the sense I'm writing about it here as a business consultant and marketing coach, is how do you communicate that message in a way that actually makes sense to the people you want to reach, the people you want to serve. Because if you use language that's about your expertise or modality, or that's about you and not about them and their problems, you won't reach them. So it's really coaching. The first part of the book is it's about communicating the spirit of your business in a way that's clear, compelling, and authentic to the people you're here to serve.
So do you, when you're advising someone, do you have them sit down, write a mission statement in which they incorporate the spirit of what their business is?
I do it a little differently than that, and actually in the book there's a whole exercise. It's called Create Your Compelling Message, and it's a 4-step process that people actually go through to understand and identify with the language of their ideal client, of the person, of the people they want to reach, so that they can communicate to them. So let me use an example.
Please do.
Okay, so for example, let's say you are a massage therapist or some kind of other body worker, and you specialize in...
I like to work on bodies.
Yes, and you specialize in car accident injury, like the pain, that's the post-trauma pain, and helping people with that. And you can do, as a massage therapist with maybe some other complementary modalities that you're certified in, you do a lot of good with a lot of different kind of people. But this is these are the people that you really know you're here to serve and help because they're in a lot of pain.
Okay.
you can talk about your expertise, but that's not going to make a difference because they just want to know, can I get some relief from the pain in my neck that I have to live with every day of my life? And you want to speak to them in that language, and you want to communicate that message to them in a way that makes them pick up the phone and call you because they know and understand that you understand their needs.
Let me ask you this, Dawn. I know your book is written for, small businesses, particularly holistic businesses, people who want to give back. But, I've often believed that you can define success by the level of integrity people bring to their labors. So you can have a good plumber and you can have a bad plumber. You can have a good attorney, you can have a bad attorney. You can have a lazy doctor and you can have a really good physician. And the difference between them is usually not their skill set or their education as much as it is their dedication, the integrity they bring to it. Are they doing what they're doing to the very best of their ability? And what I've seen is that when people do things to the very best of their ability, they not only prosper, but they generally, the plumber, for example, who does things to the very best of his ability, someone puts their arm around him and says, you're really good at this. You need to have your own business. How can I help you set it up? Or he does set up his own business. Do you feel that people that are in jobs, let's talk about just, the average listener out there, because most people are not creating their own business. People that are in jobs, can they use your tools and techniques? Can they take this system and do well in their own jobs to the point where they're able to create their own business and or be promoted within the work that they have?
Yes, absolutely, because the principles of personal development, of addressing subconscious habits of thought, relationship to money, all how you treat the value of your services, all of that is addressed in the book. And I would also say that integrity does not necessarily mean success in terms of a business owner, because you still have to treat your business like a business. So for people who are in a job and maybe are toying with the idea of one day owning a business, or simply want to master their skills and do it in a way where they can rise through the ranks of their company or get a better job or whatever, you can absolutely use this and also understand some of the foundational principles of treating your business like a business so that you can make a determination whether that's something you want to do or not.
Right. To me, in integrity in the workforce is just, are you doing the best that you can? And I mean, if whatever you're doing, is it your best, or are you just trying to, get through the day and get your paycheck and do as little as you have to do? To me, that's integrity in the workforce. Okay, so you have 4 points that an individual would begin with if they were to flesh out the spirit of what it is that they do. What are those 4 points?
Oh, the 4 steps, you mean, for compelling
4 steps.
message.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, actually, I don't have it memorized, so I'm going to pull it up here. The first thing is to get clear on your purpose.
Right.
And that, I like to have people do that through a stream of consciousness writing. So you don't pick the pen up off the paper. You just write, the purpose of my business is, the purpose of my business is, the purpose of my business is. It's just an exercise to really drill down into your your consciousness, your heart, really, your heart in the sense of your true feeling.
So now we could also adapt that to the purpose of my employment is, the purpose of my employment is, the purpose of my employment is.
Yeah.
If I were working for someone else, right?
The purpose of my work in the world.
Yeah, good. Okay.
So absolutely. Some people feel absolutely this is their purpose. They are on path as an employee. So, and then you list the benefits. What are the benefits that you provide? And benefits, there's initial upfront benefits and then there's tertiary benefits, right? So those initial benefits are whatever the results are. But a lot of times there's other benefits, like people go home and they're happier with their family if they're out of pain. Or when people don't have to deal with their screwy plumbing anymore, they are free to, go about their life and focus on their good work in the world. So there's those benefits. And then we look at the audience. Who am I here to serve? What is the obstacle, frustration, need that they have, or pain, is a way to put it, that I can solve for them, and really getting clear on who that is. And then once you gather all that information, you really go back to purpose and begin to marry it all together and really see how it becomes one whole message that speaks to your ideal audience.
When you talk about benefit often is, it is service. I mean, I tend to think about what we do by way of, the best plumber is doing the very best that they can, bringing their best, that's how I use integrity, to the service of an individual. And even though, we may think of that as, all he's doing is fixing my sink, so, it goes down the drain, there's still a great deal of satisfaction that comes about as a result of solving someone's problem, as a result of providing a service. Do you put emphasis on the service side of the benefit?
In this exercise? Yes, absolutely. And most of the people I work with, they already get that part of it. They already understand that piece of it, that they are already getting the satisfaction from solving the problem. Sometimes what they don't see is all the secondary benefits. Like if we've got our plumber, hey, my water bill's going to go down. I'm going to be able to, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I don't stay awake because I hear drip, 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 drip. I don't have that puddle underneath my refrigerator anymore where my 4-year-old can slip on it. So I have them unpack it even more to really see the depth and breadth of the value they are actually bringing to their work. Because a lot of times, holistic business owners or service-based providers, the challenge we have is recognizing how valuable that service actually is.
That's a very good point, Again, the book is Spirit, Mind, and Money, a new conversation about service and success for the holistic business owner. You can find this book right now at Amazon. I know for a fact you can pre-order it there. The author is DelVecchio, who we have been talking to. And Don, we have another break, so when we get back, we'll pick it up and we'll go to part 2 of your book. I think one of the more important parts, we've been in and out of it, kind of weaving a story, that of the mind. We're glad you tuned in today. We know you have many choices, and we're grateful you chose to join us. We love your feedback, so please join me on Facebook and or drop me an email at eldon@eldontaylor.com. I love sharing your letters and comments on the show, and that's a great way for you to participate. We'll be right back following this short break.
You're listening to Provocative Enlightenment with Eldon Taylor.
A silent battle has been raging for the territory of your mind. Like a virulent virus, the effects are spreading. In Gotcha, Eldon Taylor explores the 24/7 bombardment of information designed to manage your thinking. He demonstrates how new sound bites are championed into personal awareness, becoming memes of the culture, and this results in framing and reframing classical positions, thereby causing adjustments to personal values and history itself. Your every decision process is being managed and manipulated. Gotcha exposes the arrival of the Orwellian age in full-blown technicolor. In laying bare the current uses of the many sophisticated techniques, Eldon reveals what it is we need to do in order to avoid allowing others to puppet our thoughts. Set for release in September, you can pre-order now at the discount price of $19.88, with free freight to anywhere in the world. For details, go to eldontaylor.com/gotcha.
Hi, I'm Eldon Taylor, and you're listening to Provocative Enlightenment Radio. I'm so glad you could join me as we tackle those tough questions in search of the answers that really matter. But remember, this is a journey we are undertaking together, so I would love to hear your thoughts as well. Please send your comments to Eldon, that's ELDON, @eldontaylor.com. You can also join in the conversation by joining me on Facebook at Dr. Eldon Taylor. That's DrEldonTaylor. Now, back to the show.
Shri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari He Natanara Vasudeva He Natanara Vasudeva He Natanara Vasudeva Gopal, 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 Hey Gopal, Gopal.
Welcome back. We've been chatting with Dawn DelVecchio about her life, work, and book, Spirit, Mind, and Money. In this half hour, we will take your calls, so if you have questions, give us a call or advance your comments and questions in our chat room. And remember, I love your feedback, and a great place for that is on Facebook, so I invite you to join me there today. All right, Don, we just played your third musical choice, Gopala, by Jay Udall and the Pagan Love Orchestra. I think this is the Hindi language. Do you speak Hindi? Don?
Hi there.
Don?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you
Hi.
now. What'd you do?
Oh.
Drop your phone?
Sorry about that. No, I
That's
think
all right.
I had put it on mute before. So
Okay.
yeah. So
Do
no,
you
I
speak
don't
the Hindi language?
No, I don't speak Hindi. I do know a lot of Sanskrit terms because of my Asia connection, my study. I have a whole another part of me that we haven't discussed about my studies of India's artistic and cultural legacy in Southeast Asia and India itself and the culture and all of that.
Isn't this a Krishna prayer?
It is a Krishna prayer. It's actually, that's not the version I meant when I sent it to you, but it's okay because it's still the Asia connection for me, which is the meaning behind it for me.
That's the meaning. That's what it means to you, is that connection. Now,
yes.
Since we're on this subject, you indicated earlier that you know, as a fluke threw out Buddhism to your mother when you said you weren't Catholic. Okay?
Yeah.
So did you become Buddhist?
No. I do not ascribe to any specific, what we would call the major religion.
Okay.
And I have studied Buddhism extensively in Southeast Asia because I lived in Thailand for a number of years and have traveled to all the Buddhist countries there. So I've studied Buddhism, Hinduism, probably Asian religion, those two more than any others. But to say that I'm Buddhist, no. I subscribe to some of the principles. I find them very valuable, including, of course, meditation.
And mindfulness, of course, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get to your book, because we're short on time now. We're in our last half hour, and I want people to get a full flavor of what it is that they're going to find when they get your book. Part 2 of your book deals with the mind. The focus, employs, I guess, the way to I'm going to let you define the chapter as opposed to me do it. Unpack your ideas, what you mean by the mind and its role with money.
Yeah. So in the context of this book, I'm using the term mind to refer to the way our mind develops strategies for business, i.e. marketing.
Right.
So this is the manual section of the book, and as I say in the book, for the people who either maybe they don't have a business yet, or they're really grappling with the money issues and that's the hot button for them and they're not ready to look at marketing yet, they can skip this part first and then go back to it when they're ready to implement. This is the action portion of the book. It's when we look at offline and online marketing tools and strategies for putting yourself out there in the world, for taking the spirit of your work and your message and putting it out into the public arena in order to bring in clients and customers.
Yeah, more and more people today are finding revenue sources vis-a-vis the Internet. Let's go back to our examples earlier. You can have that plumber who also, has an online business of sorts. Maybe their hobby is lapidary work, and so they have, stones, and they cut and they polish agate and crystal and so on and so forth, and they offer that through the Internet. The guidance that you provide in your book for the average person out there who maybe has thought about, I could start a business on the Internet. I wouldn't have to give up my full-time job. I'd still have my source of income. I could define myself maybe this way, get a revenue stream going, see if it's really going to work out, Do you feel that the guidance you provide in the book would be sufficient for them to take a hold of and to start their own little business vis-a-vis the Internet?
Sufficient. Yes, it's sufficient, and there's more, depending on what their business is. The thing to understand about the Internet is it is a phenomenal tool for reach, and it's a long-term strategy unless you have boatloads of bucks to throw at it. So, you've got your website and you've got your social media and you've got to get in front of people, which means you have to probably invest in some way of doing that, like what we call traffic. In other words, eyeballs on your website. And then you have to know how to make those offers and all of that stuff. This is why in the book I teach offline strategies first, because the lowest hanging fruit, so to speak, is to get in conversations with people in your community. And it is possible to build a business online. For example, my daughter-in-law or daughter-in-law-to-be create beautiful, what she calls upcycled festival clothing. So she gets secondhand clothes and she cuts them apart and she makes new groovy clothing for kids who like to go to concerts, these festivals and things. And she has a little Etsy shop. You know what Etsy is? Etsy, it's for craft. And she's doing okay. She's beginning to get some sales that way. But it's a slow process of over time getting more and more people to see her little Etsy store and begin to buy from her. So and all of that revolves around a rabbit hole of complexity that has to do with search engine optimization and other geeky stuff that's more than we can get into here. Suffice it to say that if you do want to have a business online, you do want to start with the foundations that I teach in the book. Absolutely. And you're going to want to go beyond that once you establish those.
Right. And for what it's worth, your website is, complete with extra materials and access to courses that you do, etc. Do you have secondary materials in mind to follow up on Spirit, Mind, and Money?
Indeed. Actually, at some point I'm going to offer a training course for the next step. And then I have other supplemental material too, but my main one is that I coach with people, and then I've got a few programs, but they're still, again, very beginner. So when you're ready to take it to the next level, it's really about getting mentorship and coaching. And it doesn't have to be with me. I mean, really, the thing is, if you want to run a business and you're doing it you're doing it yourself, you want to get a coach. I mean, even the most professional sports people, athletes, have coaches. Coaching is just a part of the investment in growing the business of your business.
Okay, let's jump to the third component, part 3, as you call it, the money itself. You tell a story at the beginning of chapter 7. It's all about anger. You know, do you want to share that story with us?
Yes, I call it the anger that heals. So there's the personal story. I share some different people's stories and a few of my own. I had a friend who knew that I had been a professional writer. I was a journalist before I was a copywriter. And she contacted me saying, hey, I need some work and I need it done very quickly. Do you have some bandwidth, some availability to do that? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then she said, and I need it on a budget. And what happened for me, it was one of those aha moments where I experienced anger. Anger rose up in me. And at first I wasn't completely clear on what it was, but it didn't take me long to realize why I was angry. This was someone who knew that I had 10 plus years as a professional writer, wanted me to drop whatever it was I was doing right now to make my own living, to take on her project, get it done quickly, and then pay me less for it so that she could make money. And to be clear, I wasn't angry at her. I mean, there was a little bit of that at first, but really the truth was I was angry at me because I got what I had been projecting, what I had been broadcasting in some kind of energetic way because I hadn't cleaned up my own relationship to money, was that I'm willing to work for a pittance because I'm desperate just to get work. And even if it helps you make more money and it screws up my calendar and my schedule and my other plans, I'll do it because I need the money. And that was a watershed moment for me in looking at, God, I really have a problem here that I need to address because this is too painful to go through life like this.
Do you think, Dawn, from my own experience, as I said earlier, we give a lot of product away, and occasionally I have these situations where, because you have given it to a person, it's unappreciated, so it's not used.
Agreed.
Do you find that attaching a value to it is important sometimes? Let me qualify this a little bit this way. Placebo research, something we've done a fair amount of over here. We know that I can give you a plain white pill, and it'll be 20 to 25% effective. If I give it to you with the authority that this is a med that will cure your situation. If I put an initial on that pill, it'll become more effective. If it's a capsule, still more. If I colorize the capsule, and we even know what color to colorize it, still more. If it becomes an injection, you might get up to 75 to 80% effective with this placebo. Okay? That rivals some medications. So in other words, the higher the value perception-wise, the more powerful that placebo is. When you help someone, when you give someone something, do you think the same kind of attribute accompanies it? That is, if it's free, well, it must not be worth anything, but if it costs a lot, has that dressing of expense to it, it must be really golden. Do you think that translates into services, not just products in what we do and how what we do is perceived?
Yes, I do, and I see it slightly different, which is that when you have when you put skin in the game, or maybe I just say it or frame it differently. When you put skin in the game, you're more invested in success. So as a business owner, for example, if you invest in the business of your business by getting a business coach, the more you pay, the harder you'll work to make sure that you get the stuff done and are accountable to your work. As a receiver of services, that might translate a little bit differently, and I still think it holds true. If I just pay $20 for a massage, I'm like, I'm not, maybe I let my mind wander more. But boy, when I go to a spa and I spend $150 for an hour, you bet I'm going to be like, breathe, relax. Oh, the mind is wandering again. Go back to receiving, and be more present with the experience.
So when, a Tony Robbins charges $10,000 for an hour of coaching, that's not such a bad deal, maybe.
It depends on how big you want to play.
Well, again, if you're going to lay out $10,000 for that hour, you're going to make something of it. Just
That's right.
Like maybe that placebo, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I've been dominating your time, and I need to turn to our chat room where there are questions.
Oh, good.
You ready? We have this out of the chat room. There are many starving people who would say, why aren't you enjoying your life? You have plenty of food and a bed to sleep in. Why do you need organic foods, massages, and vacations in order to be happy? Does this not prove that we perceive ourselves as being prosperous when we have more than others, not the same or less?
I don't understand the actual question. Say that last part again, please. Does
Okay.
this not prove...
Yeah, does this not prove that we perceive ourselves as being prosperous when we have more than others, not the same or less?
I'm not really sure. I look at it from a different way, which is from the point of view, I would say higher on the Maslowian scale of need, which is self-actualization. More than, yes, I know that there are people who are living in terrible, terrible circumstances. It's not just. And we're here right now. So what is it that makes for fully living well? And to me, organic food is a value for me. And maybe it's not for other people because they say there are other people who don't get that benefit or it's not important to them. That's fine. To me, organic food is very important. I don't feel like I fully answered that question, but I'm still not quite clear on what the question is, I think.
I think this particular question really, and this is me, my conjecture, is really taking a shot across the bow of prosperity. We tend to think of prosperity, we're prosperous when we have more than someone else has, and we're not prosperous if we have the same as someone else. I don't have the ability where the chat room is concerned to directly ask that question, but I think that's what it is. And what is your take on that? Is prosperity all about having more than someone else?
Oh, the comparison issue. No, I don't think it is at all. It's about the quality of your life. What is the quality of your life? If you're busy spending your weekends fixing your piece of crap car and cleaning your house, upside down, inside out, and backwards, and then devoting 60 hours a week to building a business, and you don't have time for your kids or your joy or your celebration because you feel in a state of drudgery from work, or managing the things of life, and you can't reach for the things that you want out of your life, then you're not having a quality of life. So what will it take for that? We live in a very expensive country here, and our food is being manipulated. I mean, I'm sorry to harp on the food thing, but it's just a really important value for me.
It's true. And
so
it's loaded with
these are my
GMOs and all
priorities.
kinds, yeah.
And if we don't
but when you bring it to our country, Don, we are really taught to be consumers. I mean, for all intent and purposes, we are plugged in the very beginning to be consumers. And, the automobile that you want next, the briefcase that you carry, the clothes that you wear, the makeup that you buy, and this applies to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
That, all of that is been sold to us. We've seen it in the media. We've seen it on the billboards. We dress alike. We're all in competition to have the latest, the newest, the greatest. The new iPhone comes out and they line up for blocks and miles, We are a consumer nation. Do you think we get carried away with that?
Absolutely. I started this conversation by saying I didn't relate to mainstream consciousness. Right. To me, it's really all about freedom. How do you feel free and joyful in your life? Getting into consumer debt and more stuff is not freedom. That is not freedom. We know that. The people that I speak to, the community that this book is here to serve, knows that that's not what it's about. It's about, do I have time to wake up every day and meditate or do my spiritual practice? Do I have time to go to that yoga retreat? Because, boy, I would really love to give myself that. Do I have time? Can I afford the organic food? Whatever it is to you, it's about having that freedom to live a life that's healthy and whole and holistic.
Let me ask you this.
The more we're addicted to stuff, the less we're connected with our authentic self.
I think for me, it's also about having the ability to participate in helping with charitable causes. One of the things we do. I mean, if you can feed the migrants on Thanksgiving Day by donating $1,000 to an organization that would do that, the feeling that you get out of that, just driving by and seeing them all eating, to me, it's worth so much more than $1,000 that it's unbelievable. I mean,
yes.
So I think a lot of what wealth is about is your ability to help others.
And the first time I donated to Kiva, do you know what Kiva.org is?
Yeah,
where you do microfinancing? Yeah. I was able to donate a hunk of money, and I cried.
Nah. I relate. We all have our favorite charities, and they can bring tears to your eyes. Listen, Dawn, I want everybody to know how to get a hold of you, how to learn more about you, where they can get the book, when the book's official release is happening. So take a minute and share all that with us.
Yes. The best way to reach me right now, up until August 19th, is via my website, which is my name, DawnDelVecchio.com, DawnDelV as in Victor, ECCHIO.com. That's one word. And my book will be available on Amazon. I know you said that you saw it as a pre-order. It's not supposed to be, actually. So I was surprised to hear that, and maybe it is. But if you go to DawnDelVecchio.com, you can also access a free gift that I have to offer people that's there, and, of course, be apprised when the book launches on August 19th.
On August 19th. Now, what goes along with the book launch? Do you have one of these? You giving away all the farm goes along with it?
No. I have another free gift that will be available to people who are interested, and the book, I think we're doing it. I have a team that's helping me. It'll be by Kindle for 99 cents on the first day, and then the next day the physical copy will be available. And it's about 240-ish pages long.
Okay. The book, again, is Spirit, Mind, and Money. And I want to thank you for your work, Dawn, and for your willingness to share it with us all. We've come to the end of another episode of Provocative Enlightenment, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our show, and will join us again next week, same time and same place. And do tell your friends. Let's have them join us as well. Okay, until next time, wherever you are in the world, remember, believing in yourself always matters.
Provocative Enlightenment has been brought to you by Progressive Awareness Research and other sponsors. Provocative Enlightenment is a syndicated show and appears on other networks. For a schedule of show times, visit provocativeenlightenment.com. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, write to Eldon at eldontaylor.com.